There's a film on the West Pier. Basically, instead of having your normal talking heads interviews, we actually recreated memories of the West Pier using a mixture of 16mm and DV film, and then scratching it up and making it look black and white, so it actually looked like archival footage. Actually, I didn't like the idea, but I'll tell you why. There's a reason behind it. The reason is because I've walked by that thing about 100 times since I've been in Brighton, and to be honest with you, it's never struck me as anything except some sort of twisted piece of metal in the ocean, and I didn't have any sort of sense of history of the West Pier. But as I think after our first production meeting, it sort of a bulb went off in my head, and I thought, wow, this is a great idea.
The idea originated from the fact when I arrived here, like a lot of people, I saw the wreckage in the sea and just wondered a little bit about it, what its history was, because it didn't mean anything to me, but I'm sure that it would mean a lot to local people. So I really wanted to find out what it meant to local people.
It's a fascinating documentary. It's basically about people's memories from the West Pier, a huge wide range of different sources.
The format for this film had to be different because we were shooting on 16mm. And since it's 16mm, the cameras we're using didn't have sync sound. They were too noisy to have sync sound, so we had to kind of create a new way of filming things without having talking head interviews.
I thought it was an interesting idea with quite a bit of scope, because there's bound to have been a lot of people in Brighton and Hove who remember the pier and who have memories of the times that they spent on the pier, so really it was a case of finding half a dozen people or so who were actually willing to tell their stories on cameras.
It was just finding those little memories, sort of special ones, that we then had to sort of edit down and then work out how many of their memories we could recreate, realistically recreate.
We were looking for a good place to go and film the pier, and Dan's suggestion was that we should go to the right of the pier. So Dan went down to the beach and to the right, and I stayed up on the high level and filmed on the right. And yeah, we got lost for about an hour, and I think I've got some quite good footage there. I'm sure I would have got just as good a footage if the director had been around as well.
This project alone probably taught me more working on this film than I'd learned sitting in the classroom for the first 6-7 months of the course. So just getting out there and using the equipment and learning about focuses and aperture and things like that, which you can't read in a book. You need to go out and do it. So that was a real high point for me. It was actually getting my hands dirty.
We had a number of days on Eastbourne Pier and down at West Pier in Brighton where the weather was really very cold, so just trying to stay warm really. Lots of coffee in flasks.
They were actually really nice, friendly people that let us get onto the top floor and film from there in the local hotel.
I mean, their first shoot on Eastbourne Pier, where we recreated the Fagans' memories, was quite memorable because I really had no idea how that was going to turn out and how the actors were going to work together.
Look, we got some footage to play with. Let's do it again, probably. Come on.
It just somehow fell together so well. Jake, who played Bert Fagan, and Joe, who played Dorothy Fagan, sort of had an instant rapport and chemistry between them, which we just did not expect, and it worked better on film than I think we could have ever imagined.
I think the hardest day for me was when I had just recovered from flu, and it was the coldest, windiest, wettest day, and we had to go and film in front of the West Pier in torrential rain, and just operating all that camera equipment and the dollies and everything else in that cold weather for me was kind of quite tough. But looking back on the results, it was certainly worth it because it looks so gothic and dramatic due to all this mist and fog and wet rain that I was very glad that I crawled out of bed to do that.
Young Jude Eastall, who played the young Michael Robbins, and he didn't really know he was acting, and that was great, and that's why his performance I think is so wonderful.
Most memorable moment for me would probably be the Eastbourne Pier shoot. I think everyone in the crew has said that, but there were just so many nice bits about it. I mean, there was the Ron Cunningham recreation.
Well, when I see myself chained up and handcuffed and go diving to sea, I always shut my eyes in case I don't come up. No, I thought you filmed that very well indeed.
Which we used the actor David Marks, who was just phenomenal.
So when I met the production crew, and they gave me a book on the Great Omani. So in his case, I couldn't really get body language, but I kind of got inner unsaid language, if that makes any sense at all. I mean, because you've got to be completely bonkers to do what he did anyway. So I guess with that sort of bonkerness comes a certain sort of kind of behaviour You know, I mean, if you're going to sort of tie yourself up in chains and put some sort of hood over your head and jump off a pier, God knows how many feet that is. I mean, who in their right mind's going to do that anyway? Clearly, if he's going to do that, there must be a sort of a certain pomp about him wanting to do that. Hence all the, you know, sort of what do you say to a man, you know, and all that sort of stuff, and to try and entice the audience into my body, well, into my space, so to speak.
Makes an excellent double in film, excellent double. I like the way he was doing all this business, which you should do, you know, make out it's very difficult to get out of. And
that would probably have been one of the technically hardest days, because we had to get the guy soaked head to toe in absolutely freezing condition and make sure that he was wrapped up warm and give him coffee and the rest of that. But for me, I think that was also my most enjoyable day of filming, because we got so much done and we got such dramatic shots out of it.
The challenge was getting cold, the joy was getting not cold. It was getting warm again.
I think that he captured Ron Cunningham's character better than what we could have imagined, even though he never actually got to meet Ron Cunningham until later.
You going to sign my book for me then?
of course,
Finally.
Very too
That'd be nice, that,
Yeah,
thanks.
my trouble is I'm a bit shaky these days with this here, but
Well, adds to it.
yeah. How's this sound? To David,
Yeah.
a good film double and great guy.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, Ron.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay?
Thank you.
Very
Yeah.
good. You're excellent, first class. First class. I got a box like that.
I actually had a sort of surprising role in that I was one of the actors for the recreation with the Great Omani. That was not something I planned. I've never acted before, so it was quite a challenge. Sort of mildly terrified at the whole prospect, really.
Oh, the lady with the handbag. Well, I mean, what a kisser. What a kisser. I might go there next year and drop a half a dozen handbags in. Good girl.
Another memorable one would have to have been the waltzing mother on the West Pier, which came out. I mean, I kind of knew that it would look good, but we didn't know how good it was going to look.
Amy O'Brien, who played the waltzing lady, who was just great, and that to me was the nicest footage. Both those bits were the nicest footage we got, actually.
It was the first time for me to edit with somebody else. Normally I'm a lone editor, but I had Fareed working with me, and we went through just basically 1 week of just editing as much as we could in that time, and we got a first cut, I think, from memory, in about 4 days, and that's pretty amazing, really.
Well, the director's wife made lots of lunches, which were great, so we got to eat every day in post-production. We did some work as well, we did a bit of work, but yeah, we just sat basically in front of the computer for 7-8 hours a day.
The West Pier opened to the public nearly 140 years ago on the 6th of October,
Yeah, you had it.
Oh, God! Kick me! Designed by Eugenius Birch, the 1,115-foot long structure attracted the Victorian middle class. No.
Blooper reel. I love it. Let's go on the bloopers.
1916 saw another addition to the pier with the erection of a concert hall. Reaching a peak in... I can't say that.
I saw it. No, it's not going to hold on.
Smile came through in your
Yeah, it's not anything she says in that area is going to make her laugh. I've just been thinking erection the whole time.
Reaching a peak in 1920s. It's just what follows on after that.
We were all there sort of during the day, but again, Dan, the director, was working overnight. When we didn't finish the edit until 10 o'clock on the same day of the premiere, it was me pitching up at his house at 10 and him saying, how does this look? So he'd been working all night to get it done, which there was so much done behind the scenes that wasn't explained throughout the process. So.
It was great working with Fareed, and I kind of think it was almost like a yin-yang kind of relationship, because he was very optimistic. Everything was going to be great. Hey Dan, this is going to be great. And I was like very pessimistic and say, no, look, it's going to rain. We're going to run out of film stock. And I think that kind of balances off, and then at the end of the day we had solid material. Premiere, that was interesting. We didn't know how many people were going to turn up, and at the end of the day we had 180 there. So I think we can say it was very successful.
The mayor and mayoress were there. Some friends of mine from Kenya actually showed up, which was great.
I was sat right behind Mr. and Mrs. Mayor. You know, I felt well important. You know, a cast and crew. I'll sit there. You get anything. Aside when the lights went down and the film came up, I thought nicely done, nicely edited, nicely shot. The music's stunning. It's very gentle.
Absolutely loved it. It still makes me tear at the end of the film. So, and we had a lot of people who were tearing at the premiere as well, which was nice.
Excellent, excellent, very good quality sound. Everything was excellent quality, and I especially loved the background all the time of the seagulls, and you had the whole time the seaside atmosphere. I'm most interested to go back to almost Victorian times.
You always, as a director-writer, you have a vision of what the end product's going to look like. And I have to admit, this is the closest I've ever got to that end product. Although if you look at the storyboards, there are some quite big differences. But I think the essence or the atmosphere that I was trying to achieve is there, and that's something that's really hard to achieve. So I'm really happy that we got that atmosphere, because Bert mentioned how it was a free and easy atmosphere. He was the first person I interviewed. He said free and easy atmosphere, and I knew that's the way we had to go. And this documentary has that.
I think that we all actually came together and made something that looked pretty professional, which is what it's about really. We're being a professional film crew.